This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Malick Hour, a celebration of the life and work of American filmmaker Terrence Malick.
When I heard about Thin Red Line, I was in Ireland. My daughter was starring in a film, and at their wrap party, Irish critic came up to me and said, "Oh, I hear Terry Malick's doing another film, Thin Red Line." And I had talked to Terry maybe like once or twice in a 15-year period, and I go, "Oh my God!" And even though I had started directing and doing other stuff, I just wanted to work with Terry. So I sent him a telegram. At that time, they still had telegrams. And said, I just recovered from Days of Heaven and would love to work with. So that was like, took 20 years to recover. And 2 weeks later, I met up with him in LA at a friend's party. And he said, the story takes place in Guadalcanal. I've never been there. Could you go over with a cinematographer, a student cinematographer from AFI and shoot it so I could see what it looks like? And we went over there and the producer went with us and we shot sort of simulated scenes and shot different levels and stuff. But I fell in love with the Melanesian people. Right. They were so great. And they had some of them were Episcopalian, and Terry's Episcopalian, and they had a choir. And he heard some of that music. He just got so excited. And the studio didn't want us to shoot in Guadalcanal because it's the malaria capital of the world. So they went, "No, you can't shoot there." And I said, "Terry, at least you got to come over and meet these, Melanesians." And I loved it because it's where the story really took place. You could see, I was finding grenades and bombs. Every village had a collection, and the Australians would come over like once a year or twice a year and blow them up, but the Indians, but the natives would find them. It was just, it was exotic and wonderful. And so Terry came over and he also fell in love with it. Right. And he fell in love with the people, the Melanesian people, and he fell in love with this choir, which you'll hear in the film. But he even released a record of them singing. But that was just, it's a magical location. And we brought, I think his name is Murray Boyd, a location manager. We found Grant Hill, yeah. And then he introduced me to a supervising art director, Ian Gracie. And boy, Marvin, anyway, the location guy said, "I think I can find a location that looks like this in Queensland." And so then I went with him to Queensland, and we found a cattle farm, and it had rolling hills, but it was all eaten up with cattle and full of cow shit and stuff. But it was early. We weren't going to shoot for like 8 months or something. So we made an arrangement for him to move his cattle to another ranch, and we brought in a helicopter, and they fertilized the whole farm, and we left it. And I went back to the States, and we made a deal with an armorer to get the guns, for the film, a local armor. And I went back to the States. I came back in February, I believe, right after the New Year's, and the grass has gotten up to about 4 feet. It was beautiful. Amazing. The cattle were gone. The armorer wasn't returning my calls, and I found out in the time that I was gone, there was a mass shooting, and the government went into a buyback program, and he had sold all of his World War II stuff for $500,000 to the government. Right. Retired. So suddenly we were there to shoot. We didn't have any weapons, and Ian Gracie had heard about them getting them from Vietnam. So we checked on that. In Vietnam, the Americans had left tens of thousands of weapons over there. So we could get anything we wanted, but they wouldn't let us bring it into Australia. So we had to buy the M1, send them to Canada, where they would alter them so they could only fire blanks, then bring them to Australia to shoot our film. And when the film was over, we had to send them back out of the country. But that was the deal we made. And Terry had this idea of having all the actors, like, I don't know, it was like 40 or 50 actors there all the time. And then he would have this pool and he could just draw from whenever he needed. He was already kind of like, thinking he didn't like being tied to a script. But it was great because the actors he liked would work a lot. And if he wasn't so excited about them, they might be sitting for 30 days, and frustrated. But it was really a fun film. John Toll was the cinematographer. He did a beautiful job. Yeah. And it made a deal so at the end of the film, we would we'd shoot in Guadalcanal, malaria capital of the world.
How long did you shoot there for?
Well, we shot there almost 30 days, ended up. I remember taking a picture of John Toll and I just titled it Day 125. And we were in Guadalcanal at that time. Wow. But Guadalcanal worked out great. Visually, all that water stuff that the film opens, that was shot in Guadalcanal. And, it's an island. It was hard. Ian Gracie, the supervising art director, we were up looking for sago palms to build the villages, and we saw this beautiful stream, and there was a bamboo pole coming out at one point and clear water dripping down. He said, "Oh, I'm going to drink some of that." And I go, "I don't think you should." The next day, he got really sick and ended up flying back to Australia because he got some parasite or disease. And I'd gotten a parasite earlier when I was over there scouting the first time, right, that I'd gotten rid of by then. But there's just all kinds of things that could slow you down.
Lots of snakes as well. Lots of poisonous snakes.
No, there weren't. No, I didn't see any snakes. You know what happened? I think when the American soldiers were there for 10 years or so, they killed crocodiles and snakes. So there was no crocodiles and no snakes. Right. Yeah. So the snakes are in Australia. Australia was horrible for the most poisonous snakes in the world. They have one called the brown snake. And I mean, you don't get back to your car. You don't get anywhere. And I was scared to death working there. And when I first, I read about them before I left, and they said they have 15 of the 25 most deadly snakes. And I was going through this tall grass, suddenly it's like 4 feet tall. You can't see anything. And I had snake boots on, and I'd carry a pole and make a lot of noise, singing and stuff to try and scare them away. But after a while, you get tired of doing all that, and the boots are heavy, and you're in your sneakers. And I'm walking out in this tall grass, and I hear this rustling beside me, and something brushes against my side and goes off, and you can barely see him, but it was a little wallaby, which is a tiny kangaroo, but very scary. So that happened to me twice, just because I'm usually out there by myself in the beginning, and you scare up all kinds of stuff. But I saw so many dangerous snakes, and black mambas and brown snakes, and I got to think that if I went to a location and there was a snake there, it was good luck.
Right.
So I was always looking for him, and I'd always find him. So many horrible stories, but nobody got bit on the film. When we're shooting, and it's hard when you're in the art department because you're first people out there. By the time we're shooting, they have snake wranglers, looking for snakes and stuff, kind of keep the area clean. But more scary to me was these saltwater crocs. Like I never wanted to go in the water because the water would be dark, mangroves and stuff. And you go in, and you might go in 3 times, and maybe the 3rd time or the 4th time or the first time, they can jump out of the water, grab you, and take you under, twirl you around and stuff you under some mangroves and to marinate you for a few weeks and then come back and eat you.
That does not sound good.
No. And there was one girl that was a model, and she was from Charlottesville, the same town where I live now. And she was over there doing a modeling shoot out in the, in this water. And at the end, she dived into the water and she was killed.
Oh my God.
And then in Daintree was a great little kind of Western town. I think it had 3 shops in it. There was a woman there that was out on Christmas Day with not her husband, but with her boyfriend. And she was topless in the water, and they were frolicking, and she got taken under and killed. It was kind of a scandal because it wasn't her husband she was with. And then the guy that put in the roads for us through the jungle, which I love, the Australian, And, you know, I sort of dressed with long sleeves and long pants. I hardly ever wear shorts and stuff. But we walked through the jungle. The studio said you have to have a second route to location. You can't have just one way in.
Right.
And so it meant we'd have to put a road through the jungle. And he had a bunch of these plastic grocery bags, and we hiked. And he said, "How about here or there?" And you know, he'd tie plastic bags up on the tree limbs. And so when he went through with his cat, he'd kind of guide him. You know, he'd find the best footing and everything. And then that afternoon, we went over to the sandwich shop in Daintree. And as we were eating in the patio, he was like pulling leeches off his legs, you know, not even thinking about it, but just so tough because the jungle has all that kind of stuff there. And I got a letter for a few months after we were shooting, or maybe a year, that he had been killed in a knife fight in a bar over a girl. So it seemed so wonderful and poetic and horrible at the same time. But you meet so many great people working on films, and this was, you know, a great Australian character, and he just lived. But yeah, I remember going to look at location. I pulled up this guy's house out in the middle of nowhere, and he goes to this little garage next to him and wheels out by hand. He pulls out this little helicopter,
right,
a black helicopter, and we get in it and take off, and he flies around to show me locations.
Wow!
And we come back to his house out in the middle of nowhere. So it's like it was in a shed. And in Guadalcanal, we use helicopters. They have, like, I don't know if they're oil people or some kind of mining people there, and there were a lot of helicopters, and they would take the doors off so they could, you know, get air in. So I remember taking Terry up in one of those. He was just scared to death. He's so cautious, but he's so uncautious when he's working. Right. But just in normal life, he's really careful.
Could I ask you?
He drives a little.
Oh, sorry. What does he drive?
He drives a little like a Honda Civic or something, you know. Like, but what he really wants to drive is one of those macho cars. But he's just so humble. I don't know. I remember when we were working on Tree of Life, he wanted Sean Penn's character to drive a Honda Civic, the same car he had. Right. And I go, but Terry, he's wearing these Armani suits, and he's a top architect in town. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And he goes, well, I drive one. And I said, no, he's got to drive at least a BMW or something that's hip. So he reluctantly agreed. But then I noticed in the film, he never showed him driving his car. Car was absent. So you think you're winning a point, but you don't. And he always said to me, and later to Chivo, he said, and it's kind of what you were saying at the beginning of this, if there's anything you don't like, I'll take it out. Don't be scared of doing something, because I'll take it out. And with Chivo, Chivo wouldn't want to shoot something because there wasn't enough light. He'd just shoot it. If it doesn't work, we won't use it. Don't worry. I'm not going to sabotage you. And he was true to his word. Right. But he was so brilliant. We were shooting, I hate to jump around so much, but we were shooting The New World, and that was the first film that he and Chivo worked on. Right. And we were doing an evening shot, and the natives were out in the water with torches, and Terry was really excited to shoot it. And the Chivo was saying, no, there's not enough light. We can't shoot it. Terry said, that same thing, just shoot it. If it doesn't work, we won't use it, but he shot it, and it came out beautiful. So I think that won over Chivo sort of early on. And Chivo just arrived from doing Lemony Snicket, right, which was like the biggest lighting package in the history of Hollywood. I mean, their diesel fuel for generators was sort of equivalent to the whole budget of our film. He had put cables. He snuck cables into all the sets because he knew that Terry would, he said, all directors say, oh, we're going to do it natural light. And then, then they want light. Yeah. They want, got to keep shooting. And they wrecked a couple of sets, like putting heavy cables on top of them and in them and digging up trenches. And the grass that I was getting growing next to the sets was suddenly destroyed. But he was so certain that Terry was going to want this electricity. And we never used one of those cables. Right. As a matter of fact, we showed up at one set and he had all these lights in, and Terry looked at it and he was real polite and stuff. He said, okay, but you got to get all these lights out. Right. And I put skylights up there, like openings. And that's sort of why I started doing Chivo, is I just open up the walls of the set to let light in. And later, Chivo started shooting with digital because it had a longer range. And he learned how to work it so it looks just like film or better. I mean, I think he said after Revenant that he wasn't going to shoot anything but digital because he learned ways to control it. And he had so much more control in the post-production. And he loved Terry. They had I was talking about having an exchange with the cameraman. Well, with Chivo, he really found it. Joking, the laughter. Chivo would all go to Terry into doing more stuff. It'd be more daring, and, more crazy, and Terry loved it. He loved it. So it was just fun going to work, every day. Sure. And in those later films, we didn't know what we'd be shooting that day. And he'd say, oh, let's meet at 9:00 and we'll decide what we're going to shoot. And we sometimes would replicate sets. So there was one that would work in the morning with natural light and one that worked in the afternoon with natural light. But they were both like the boys' bedroom.
Right.
And so depending on what time of day it was, we go to this one or we go to that one. What I did in that town where we shot Tree of Life was I got about 5 square blocks and just went through, and everything that wasn't right for the period, we took it back to the 50s. We took out or covered or hid or changed so that Terry could kind of go anywhere he wanted in that neighborhood and shoot. They had the right cars on the street and the right windows, got rid of the air conditioners and, the satellite dishes and everything. So it was give them as much freedom as possible.
Yeah, I visited the town in June when I came over. Smithville, yeah. And it does look fairly sort of 1950s as is, Yeah.
Oh yeah. We didn't do that big a thing, but I just wanted him to feel that he could go anywhere he wanted. We love that town. We try to figure out what the people do for a living. We figured they were all those government, criminals that they put, they put there to be safe.
Oh, like which witness protection?
Witness. Yeah, witness protection. Most of them. But I met a great artist there who lived next door to the main house we shot in. And in that film, I thought, well, they need to have a live oak tree in their yard, because it's called the Tree of Life. Right. And so there was a limit to how big a tree we could move. And then I started reading about the trees. They moved a couple at the University of Texas, and it cost them $135,000, like with no guarantees. Right. And I started shopping around. People wanted to sell us trees and stuff. And I found one out, or somebody found one out in this ranch under a power line that they were going to have to cut down because it was going to hit the power line. And we made a deal to purchase it for next to nothing. And then we couldn't afford $135,000, so we got some local workers to dig a trench around, and we balled up the ball of the tree, and we got a crane to come out in a big truck, a flat trailer, to pick it up. And Terry was excited in the beginning, but after a minute, he said, "Okay, I don't want any filming done of that tree. I don't want to be associated with this film," because I think he was scared to death of hearing we killed a tree on the Tree of Life. So he let me proceed, but it was sort of like my own folly, Right. And he didn't want to be connected with it. But we got that crane to pick up the tree, and I looked at the scale inside the crane. It was 60,000 pounds.
Wow.
And it was about as big as we could move. And we put it on the back of this trailer, and the county had to allow us to go up the highway the wrong way to avoid going under an overpass. Right. And so we were doing it. Anyway, we took the tree about 5 miles. It took us 2 days. And we had the power company coming to move lines, the telephone company and the TV cable people. So people were like taking lines down, and then another crew would be putting up right after us. The people in the town were out in their lawn chairs watching the tree go by at about 2 miles an hour. And it became quite an event, and it didn't cost us very much. But we put the tree in, and those oak trees around February lose all their leaves, right, or most of them. So we put it in the hole, and I studied about how to water them. And they said, don't water to the base of the tree, but around the perimeter where you are to get the roots to encourage them. And then all the leaves fell off the tree, and I go, "Oh my God, we're going to have a dead tree in the yard." The tree of life. And like a week later, I started seeing little buds come out, and it was saved. And last time I went there, it was still there, but I haven't been there in probably 6 years or so. Right. But it got a lot of heat and stuff. But the tree seemed to be all right. The woman that lived in that house died, and I think the family moved out. Terry and I would walk that whole town, looking at houses and stuff. And right. He seemed. I finally said, I think this is where we should shoot, because it was on the corner, so you had light, but it didn't have a building right next to it. I think all the time when I think I've convincing him of something, I think that was what he wanted to do anyway. Right. He kind of lets me come to the idea, because he's been everywhere. He seems to know everything. And anyway, we picked that house, and then I started adding windows to it to let more light in for Chivo. Right. And we built a back porch that, that it was all translucent, so light would come in, and painted it and fixed it up, simplified it. It worked out really great. That was just a wonderful town. The streets, you could walk up and down the streets, and you've been there, it's just, you're lost in time.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what year it is.
Lots of thrift shops and occasional bars.
Yeah. There was one restaurant I used to go to every day, because if we're ever there at the same time, if the restaurant still exists, we should go there. But it was really nice. It was kind of like you never knew what they were cooking. They would cook something, and then you would eat that. And I got to really like it. I love being in a small town, and everybody had bicycles and stuff. I lived in the woods nearby. It actually burned down a couple of years later.
Oh, right.
But Terry was really happy with that, working there in that town.
Could I go back for a second to Days of Heaven, because in Badlands there was this difficulty with the cameraman, and Days of Heaven I've heard was much better and much more, but there was still, again, there are stories which this is a sort of nightmare shoot, and there are what was your experience of it in terms of, did you sense it was as difficult as Badlands, or did you feel it was easier, or has that been exaggerated?
I don't know, because I just dealt with trying to get all the sets ready in 4 weeks, so everything seemed easy after that. I remember the wonderful costume designer we had on that film. She died now, but she was a good, dear friend. She later worked as a production designer for David Lynch. She would come up to me and say, "Who do you have to fuck to get off this picture?" And it's like the opposite of Hollywood. Who do you have to fuck to get on the picture? But it's like, who do you have to fuck to get off the picture? Well, one day I had my dog with me, and the guard at the gate was about a quarter mile away, where they had a guard to kind of keep looky-loos from coming up. Well, his dog came up, and we were having a production meeting, and his dog started humping, or trying to hump my dog. And Terry said, get that other dog off the set. And Patty Norris, she says to me, "Oh, that's who you have to fuck to get off the show." It just cracked me up. But I'm sure it was really difficult.
Right.
We had so many. I like love it when it gets difficult.
Uh-huh.
You don't get bored. I think it was difficult for a lot of reasons. Some of them I wouldn't want to talk about, but I don't remember. Terry was working with producers the first time. There were two of them. Harold and Bert Schneider.
Right.
He had to deal with only Lou Schroller in the first one, and suddenly has to deal with two of them. I think Nestor Alejandro's left after just a few weeks to go do a Truffaut film, right. Little Children. And Haskell Wexler came up, and Haskell Wexler was great. But I think Terry he loved Nestor Alejandro's. And Haskell was able to mimic the style that they created, and he actually improved on it, I think, because Nestor's interiors we never used. He would use a soft light, but it just wasn't favorable to the settings, and it didn't look natural, I didn't think. But Terry would never say anything like that, and because I don't know, he had such an admiration for Nestor, and he was able to talk to him about lighting for the first time, and he couldn't do that so much on Badlands. So that was kind of a wonderful arrangement. And Haskell came in Haskell, I remember he had a satellite phone with him, so suddenly we had communication with the outer world. He would come to me every morning and he'd go, what's the best parts of the set? What should we shoot? And I would see him, he would direct Terry this way. Oh, wait, we could shoot this. And Terry was into the backlight in Magic Hour, we called Tragic Hour,
right?
Because we'd always be right, or Magic 15 Minutes. I think maybe I don't know what the problem. I don't know what you've heard about problems or what they could be. Terry seemed more determined, more focused than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is this. A lot of this comes from the Biskind book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. I think it's basically because his whole thesis is the 1970s is full of these wild, crazy, excessive filmmakers, and he wants to put Terry in that slot, And that's where I think the narrative has gone a bit skew-whiff in terms of.
Terry always had problems with ADs because he was so unstructured, But I don't. He was like such a good I mean, he never wanted to hurt anybody. He's a very spiritual person, and he's very humble, but he's very determined to make the film. I mean, he seemed to understand from day one that if you don't get it, then you're never going to have it. It's not going to magically appear in the editing room if you haven't shot it. And he kept very open to things, those changes like the snow, he could departmentalize stuff in his head and go forward if it was going to be beneficial to the film.
How did you do the sleigh then? Where did you get the sleigh from? The sled?
Oh yeah, we had a wonderful wrangler, John. I'll think of his name in a second. He worked with us later on The Revenant, 40 years later. But he happened to have a sleigh. And he also organized, he knew people that had steam tractors. Like we brought all those steam tractors out. Those steam tractors, it takes 2.5 hours to get them ready, to get heated up the steam. So in the morning, they start building the fires in them. And Terry loved all that stuff. I mean, he loves the animals. We would be shooting a scene, and if a crane flew by or some interesting bird, he would just stop and shoot that. He loves nature. I think nature is like sort of those untrained actors.
Right.
It seems real to him. But
did he drive any of those tractors?
Oh yeah. We've got. I think it might even be in the film. Him drive. I've got photographs of him driving a tractor. Right. Yeah, he did. He loved all that stuff, and he'd drive them in the fire sequence. He just drive them through the fire. They're like big locomotives. There's shots in the film where he's driving through and like running over stuff, and it was just.
I heard as well that he's in a bit at the very beginning of the movie where they're in the steel mill or just out Brook and are picking through sort of scrap.
Yeah,
and I've got a feeling that there's a guy behind Brook with a hat on, and he's a big-ish guy, and that to me looks like another sort of Terry Malick cameo.
It could be. We shot that in Los Angeles. Right. So after we did everything, we could find these steel mills out there, and we came back in southern LA, shot all that stuff. Yeah, it probably is. Terry was also in in Badlands. He played the architect, and he's always
the detective from Boston.
He always acts embarrassed by that stuff, but I think he enjoys it. Yeah. Did
you ever see his first film, Lantern Mills, his AFI film?
I did.
And what was your reaction to that?
I can't believe the same guy made the film I can't believe the same guy made Badlands. I liked it, but he never wants anybody to see it, but somebody sent me a DVD of it. Yeah, I saw it. I think I told him I saw it. He was like, no, how'd you get that? I wonder if they may have a copy at AFI or something like that.
Yeah, they do, but you've got to have permission from him to see it. I'm not kidding. It's believe me, I've asked. And it's like,
yeah, I really enjoyed seeing it, but it didn't help me. I mean, like I say, it's so different from. He's in the film a lot, though. He plays one of the characters.
Right.
Just starting to remember it now.
He does
It was shot down in LA.
He does a chicken dance as well.
Yeah.
That's probably why he doesn't want me to see it, I think.
Yeah. He also Warren Oates. They had a great relationship. Warren Oates was so much fun, and I think Terry War Notes had been the film that Terry had written earlier, and Terry is.
Oh, he was in the Dion Brothers, wasn't he? Or Gravy Train, I think it's called as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but he can do anything if he wants to. I was surprised. I didn't know how shy he was, from cameras until probably didn't realize it until we were doing Thin Red Line. I've always taken stuff, but he never seemed to mind.
Why do you think that is, the shyness in front of cameras?
I just think it's some of the, I don't know, humility, but I think it's also smart. I mean, it's like David Lynch never talks about the meaning of his films, and I think Terry didn't want you focusing on him. He wanted you focusing on the film. It's hard. It's a lot of responsibility to become kind of a Hollywood person, and there's a whole nother set of parameters for behavior and stuff that everybody has a comment, everybody has a thought, and you can just avoid that. It's like wearing the same clothes every day. You don't have to think about that. Sure. You don't have to worry about it.
Did David and Terry, they were at the AFI at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And did they know each other quite well, or
they knew each other? I don't know how. I don't think it was that close, because David was focused on doing Eraserhead, right, and Terry was actually writing Hollywood scripts while he was a student at AFI. And then he was, early on there, he was getting this Badlands together, and I think Badlands budget was like $250,000, and David's Eraserhead was like $50,000. But it was all done through the school until they kind of gave him, it took David 5 years to make Eraserhead. Right. He would talk about a scene with Jack Nance. He went through a door, and when he came out the other side, it was 5 years later.
So when you got to making films like To the Wonder and Knight of Cups, and was your role changing there, or was it similar?
It was, what happened was Terry, I think he was getting bored by filmmaking, but he started doing To the Wonder, Knight of Cups, and
Song to Song.
It was suddenly they're biographical, and because he had gotten this sort of free form method, there were no scripts,
right?
And so it changed my work considerably, because I sort of I would make up locations or find locations, and he wouldn't want to see him in advance. He would just want to show up and shoot them. And he liked it because it scared him a little bit, I think, is what he said at one time. But it became less interesting for me, because I felt more like a location scout than a designer. Right. And then I, got filmed with like Alejandro, and, where there were scripts, and, I could do what I like to do. So it was, it changed quite a bit with Terry once after Tree of Life, because he'd abandoned his scripts. He's gone back to scripts now. I mean, when he did the one in Germany or Italy.
Yeah, The Hidden Life.
So he had a script.
I guess it's that period as well that you have, when you're making a period movie, it's much more called for.
Yeah, for me, it's more exciting, but it's more challenging. I liked a lot of stuff about his freeform stuff, but suddenly when it could be anywhere, and actually with I found with Terry that a lot of stuff he wants to say, as a philosopher, it doesn't matter which character says it, So he would just, at that time, he would show up with sometimes like when we did To Wonder, he said, well, there's a 300-page script at the office. You can read it if you want to come there. And we sent our set decorator, Jennifer Scott, over there to read the script. But it was just words, it wasn't scenes or stuff. It's thoughts about life, I think, that Terry had, that, and like I said, this person could say it or that person could say it. The amazing thing he did on Days of Heaven was bringing Linda Mann, who wasn't an actor.
Right.
She's 9 years old or something, and she is so strong and so good. And they developed a way of working that, just took advantage of her sort of, the naiveness of her was worked as a real advantage. She would say anything. And he learned not to ever practice lines with her, because then they would become, so he would always like throw in different things. was great. And it'd be hard for an actor like Brooke to be competing with a 9-year-old kid that's got the director's focus. And I think he sort of, probably with Brooke and many of the other actors, he sort of expected them to do this, and he was going to concentrate on this. And that might have, where she got that he, was less disappointed. But it's an amazing feat. And
it's interesting as well, that idea that with his later films, he becomes more biographical, because that's also like the tension between him being very private, but then these films are about topics which are, derived from his life.
I've asked him about that. It seems weird. I remember when we were working on the Christian Bale in L.A., Night of Cups, and we were shooting some nightclubs, and he wanted wild and crazy stuff happening. And I'd read an article on all this stuff at Studio 54, and then Terry started describing. He sort of accused me of not having any, wildlife, which is probably true. But he started describing all this stuff, and it was exactly out of this article I read about 54, Close Studio 54. So I think he was doing his biographical, but he was also adding things that he wished had been part of his life. Maybe he's a strange guy. When he disappeared for 15 or 20 years, I'd get reports from people either driving cars or, that had brushed against him. And I remember one guy saying we were in France. My wife had a film at Cannes, and we went out and we were at this swimming pool party and talking to this guy who was having the party. And we started talking about Terrence Malick, and he says, "Oh, he cuts my hair in Paris." And he lives in a garage in Paris and cuts my hair. And it's just the image of this director who I revered, like cutting somebody's hair in Paris. But then later I knew he had a French girlfriend, so it all seemed kind of feasible. I talked to a limo driver who once said he was driving Terry around, and he was having script meetings, but he would every once in a while he'd get out of the limo and go over and make a phone call from a public telephone, because he didn't want anyone to have his home number. So he would do that. And then somebody else told me they saw him selling T-shirts at a Willie Nelson concert in Austin. It was just, my mind was going like zigzag, going crazy thinking. But I never asked him about this stuff because I just enjoyed the images so much. And it became kind of a mystery of that 15 years or 20 years. Like, what was he doing? It was right before he disappeared. Patty Norris and I had met with him about doing a film, I forget, was it Quest for Fire, kind of like Quest for Fire, about cavemen and stuff like that. And he was all excited. And then I think Quest for Fire came out and kind of dampened that. And Charlie Bluedorn, who was head of Paramount, said, "I'll give you $1 million, make any picture you want." And suddenly, just knowing you could do anything you want, like maybe it's whatever you want is not good enough, you do something more. So, but anyway, he disappeared, and I loved Days of Heaven so much, and it just blew my mind that he disappeared. My wife was working on a film in Austin, and somebody in the film lived next door to Terry. And so they were going to arrange it. I wanted to talk to him. And so they somehow got word to him, and we talked the next day, and he asked about directing. I directed a couple of films, and he said, "Was it fun?" And I go, "Yeah, it was fun." And that's the last time I talked to him before I learned he was doing Thin Red Line. Because in Badlands, when I talked to him about it, he said making a film was like war. He felt like he was, everybody was fighting him, and it was not a pleasant experience. And I think that in a way, working with the studio and producers and, deadlines and everything in Days of Heaven must have also been some of that war stuff.
Sure.
But by the time he got in Red Line, he was feeling a little better. He didn't like the producers, he banned them from the set and stuff like that. But if he wanted to talk to him, he'd tell me what to say, and then we would get messages back and forth. But he, by the time when he met with Chivo and he started making films like so fast, he found a way to work that he loved.
Yeah.
And suddenly he was having fun making films. And I think like every artist has, that whole thing that was sort of biographical. We all go through stuff, and you got to feel like you can make mistakes or not make mistakes or experiment. And he's probably just was exploring his own life, trying to figure out what it was. He lost 2 brothers and parents, and it's just that he was sort of wondering about his life out loud, in the media that people see. So it's like what we might go through quietly or, on our own. His stuff is played out into the world media. It's different. That
might be the paradox, really, is that he's so private that it allows him to express it in his art without.
I don't know that he thought everybody else would know that it was biographical or not biographical. But I think it's the thing that interested him most was, trying to look into his own life. And he did it, in various ways. But I was surprised that he did 3 in a row. But I think they were important for him to do. And, he was making films so fast. I remember at one point saying to him, this was later after the biography, I said, Terry, you should take some time off. He goes, I took 15 years off. So he was still, he's like so driven. He wants to make films. And I thought that was great because, there was 20 years between Days of Heaven and Thin Red Line. Yeah. And suddenly he was finished a film and started another one, or before he finished. He used to call me and go, okay, next April, it'd be like 10 months away. Right. I'm going to do a film, keep yourself available, and I couldn't believe he could plan that far ahead.
And I'm looking forward to the latest film, the Way of the Wind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was, I find that most of the stuff he's written when he was really young, in this one, over a 14-year period, we went and looked at locations around the world for that film.
Right.
We were in Morocco and Israel, and we just, it was just Italy, and, it was just like it's the most important film to him.
Right.
So it was always, when we worked on it, it was always called Way of the Wind. I just saw it today. It's called something else.
I think they call it The Last Planet is on one site.
Last Planet. Yeah, that's when I saw it. And I think it's going to be great. I assume. I ended up not doing it. I didn't want to be out of the country that long. I just didn't. And it was a time when we'd been looking at stuff in the Middle East, and it was kind of uncertain times. And, in the art department, you're out there first person, and I just, I got grandchildren and stuff. I hesitated. I couldn't do it. But
is that from an early script then?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like I said, we were looking at location for 14 years, and I don't know how many years ago he started writing it, but most of the scripts he has, he seemed like he had them from the time of Badlands. It's crazy, the ideas.
Right.
Because I think Thin Red Line kind of popped up because of the book, but most of them aren't from books. They're from.
The New World was like from the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. The New World, I think the reason there was a wiki up in Badlands, because he had worked on that idea of
right.
The New World, he always wanted to call, or not always wanted to call, but he said the original idea was, title was The Mother of Us All. And I think I don't know really ever what he's really thinking, but I thought it was like, that Pocahontas kind of changed, the direction of everything. It was a fun film to do because I live in Virginia. It was the only time I ever got to work in Virginia.
So not a long commute.
No, it was great. It was, and I loved it. I love here. And we were on the water, which was wonderful. It was just, my daughter was working on the film, and, I met David Crank, a great art director, out of Richmond, who I worked with for about 8 years after that.
Right.
And the actors were so good. We were working on Badlands, Martin Sheen would be like a rap. He would be moving cable, and everybody was. And I think that's what Terry missed about it, was everybody was chipping in and doing stuff. Right. It was never, things weren't compartmentalized, and nobody was beneath or above any job, you could do any, and everybody worked. And Martin really connected with Terry, and as Sissy did, they would have done anything for him. But, if you want to get the shot and you're losing the light, you just grab cables and run. And I found out we were doing that with Alejandro on Revenant, because it was all about the light.
Right.
And you miss it, you've got to wait another 24 hours, and hopefully it's the same type of day the next day.
Yeah. I was talking to August Deal, the actor from Hidden Life, and he said that Terry had gave them a speech before they started, and he said at the top there's light, and then all the way down there's not much, and then there's light again, and then you go down further, and then there's like costumes and acting and that sort of stuff. But that was his sort of like priorities, was light at the top, then nothing for a bit, and then more light, and then nothing for a bit, and then acting and story and things like that.
Terry hated continuity.
Right.
He just hated it. He would say continuity is for sissies. And I remember when we were working on Thin Red Line, and there were all these soldiers in a ditch, and they were doing a scene, and I think it's when actor gets blown up or something.
Woody Harrelson, yeah.
Woody Harrelson. And we're doing the scene, and he says, cut. And suddenly wardrobe and makeup run in and start fiddling, and he wants to keep shooting. And from that day on, I never heard him say the word cut. He just stopped saying. So no one was ever given a license to go back in and touch up. Here the guy's like fighting for life. If their hair's messed up, it'd be just fine. If they get dirt on their clothes, it's just fine. And it was those little changes like that. And that's what frustrated him the most, was when his shooting got interrupted, and it was for something like continuity. Oh, that's the wrong pin, or that's the wrong shirt, or that's wrong. He just would drive him crazy, because he just wanted to keep in the moment. Yeah. And then now that he shoots in video, he can do 20-minute takes. So he never says cut. He just starts rolling the camera and keeps it rolling. And they say, okay, do it. Let's do it again. Let's start this. But they never really stop anything. We were shooting in the New World, and we built this village, the Jamestown Fort, and it was over a period of years, and there were some new buildings I was trying to put in to make it look like it had evolved, changed. Yeah. And I had to put this thing in, but Christian Bale showed up, and he wanted to shoot some stuff of him in the older fort. I said, well, don't show that building. And, because it's later. And he's, oh, no, I won't do that. Don't worry about it. And so he started shooting, and I realized that, knowing Terry, that he was going to shoot whatever he wanted. And I borrowed this orange, neon parka from somebody. And I went and stood in front of this building. And the 8 days there was, get out of there, don't get me. And he comes around with his camera, and he gets on that building, and there's Christian, and there's me in the background with the orange jacket, and he just started laughing. I said, you've been caught.
Checkmate.
And I remember one time that we were shooting at the same set, but earlier, and it was starting to thunder and lightning. Yeah. And the producer said, but it looked beautiful. He said, okay, everybody's got to be off the set, shut down, because lightning's within 30 miles or something. And Terry was so frustrated, he just picked up the camera and just started going out and shooting. And it also reminds me of the days of having on Badlands, the last day. I mean, we'd been up there for a while, and I was heading home, and I pull up near the hotel, and he's got his dog Abimelech, the Great Dane that's in the movie, and Jill and him, and a big stack of 35 millimeter film that's probably about 3 feet tall. And he was going to stay in there and shoot stuff that they could use. Right. And so he just never gave up. And he was keeping film that he later used in, what's the film that had the dinosaurs in it?
Oh, Tree of Life, or The Voyage of Time.
What, Voyage of Time? Yeah, Voyage of Time. Yeah. He was shooting footage for that since, I think he was in high school probably. I don't know. He had stuff in his garage, or volcanoes and eclipses and every little thing that he's trying to resurrect and save. And so he's got the most full life of anybody I know, and he's like truly an artist and working in a medium that's kind of new to artists.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 100 years or something, but it's like a fine artist, and he doesn't really care, I don't think, what people think that much. I mean, people he doesn't know what they think. But I had problems because we were working on a film and, trying to get it set up and say it was going to cost $50 million. And says, well, somebody would say to him, well, we can only give you 25 million. Goes, I can do it for that.
Right.
Or if it was 5 million, I can do it for that. It was like, he just wanted to make the film, and, we don't need all that other stuff. I'll give me the actor.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. He got, in Thin Red Line, he had to bring in actors, like John Travolta and George Clooney and stuff to make the studio happy. And I think that kind of control just drives him crazy. That that he would somehow, they would try to infiltrate his film, or call the shots, or make it a different movie. Make a more commercial movie.
Yeah, I mean, that film's a miracle to me, because it's a big budget war movie, but it's absolutely unique. It's just so fascinating.
It was one of my favorite experiences too. Yeah. Clooney was not a happy camper in that film. He'd just been spoiled, getting too much star treatment, and Terry had all these actors there, and it's just like, whoever worked the hardest, they would get the next shot. It's like it was a unique experience. I never want to embarrass Terry, but I want people to know how I think the thing that strikes me most about Terry is how humble he is,
right,
but how forceful he is in getting what he wants on film. By the time we did Thin Red Line, he was together with Eki,
right,
a childhood sweetheart, he knew from high school. And she was on every film, and they're just so close. It's just he was never embarrassed having bringing his wife or anything, her children on set to be a part of the film. And he just, it's an inspiration to me. He aspired to be that kind and gentle, and at the same time he's like so smart. He goes, he says, I don't understand anything about computers, but then he starts talking about stuff that's detailed about computers, and it's not really anything he doesn't know. He's got a photographic mind. I remember when we were going to set on Thin Red Line, we were living right next to each other in apartments, and we were talking about a book, and he told me what page something was on, like 218. It's scary. And I go, how do you think like that? How do you do all that stuff? I'm always thinking I have to clear out my mind so I can fit something else in, but he retains stuff, and he knows, and I think that's part of what makes him so smart.
Yeah.
It works for me because every film I feel like I'm starting over, but I like that. Yeah. It's like I'm learning to walk again. It's kind of scary, fun at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking about Terry. I really miss seeing him. We get down to Austin every once in a while. We got a house down there, but I haven't been down there for a few years.
Yeah.
Oh, this COVID's gotten in everybody's way. Terry talked to me when he called me. I was on the roof of my daughter's house in Austin fixing the roof, and we had a call from Terry, and he said, "Can you come to Italy?" And I go, "No." And he said, I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I've got this production designer here, and he just sits in his office all the time." He's so used to me because I'm a kind of a hands-on type thing, and a lot of production designers do sit in their office, but I grew up with Terry, and I work completely differently.
Yeah, that's the best way.
Yeah, and that's fun, and it's just I sort of developed my style from Terry's style. Was what worked well with him became sort of the way I like to work. It is a fun life.
hopefully I can do some justice to the stories and the adventures.
Just transcribing all this stuff is a challenge. How do you, and then edit down to find those few wisps.
It's kind of when you're listening in a conversation as well, you're hearing things and I mean, because some of it, this isn't going to be an oral history, so it's not going to be big chunky things.
Right.
Some of it can inform the narrative, and I'll just rephrase it and put it into the piece. And then other bits, there are little turns of phrases which are absolutely perfect to quote. But to tell you the truth, I cheat with transcribing. I use a program that sort of does it for me, and then it allows me to listen back, and I can correct little bits. So I don't have to sit and type it, which until like a year ago, that's what I would have done. So
I'm glad the technology has really made it easier for all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
I was excited when the fax machine came. I said, I can send drawings to New York. I don't even have to.
Yeah.
Over the telephone.
Get instant.
But now it's just ridiculous. And researching has also gotten easier.
Although with this book, I found the best research is to write to librarians who any local librarian will do free research for you if you ask them nicely.
Really?
Yeah. You just write to the local librarian and say, "Oh, I'm researching this book," and they'll just two days later you'll get an email with everything that you needed.
That's so smart. Last film I was working on, I ended up going through county records and court, documents to get information about where people lived.
Right.
It was exciting, but I felt more like a detective than a designer.
That's it.
But I need to know this stuff to design the set. That's why. When Terry got into when we started doing all the location stuff, I didn't have the same sense of purpose or excitement. But I was just thinking about that. I told you about the time, the last day of shooting, it's starting to snow on Days of Heaven. He says, "Well, I think we'll have to do one for Uncle now."
Yeah.
And then he didn't do anything for 20 years. I think the idea of doing something commercial just didn't fit into his framework for his career. Yeah.
Do you think he's got another one brewing after this one?
I'm sure he does. Yeah. But I just was looking at IMDb. He's involved in so many things where he's helping young filmmakers, executive producer on this and this and there. And I know that people come to him. He gets like the best young filmmakers, want to have his input, and so he's helping spawn a whole new generation of artists and filmmakers. I think. Sure changed my life. Mr. Malick. Yeah, I think I first heard about you working on this book, many months ago, but then, a lot of people are writing books, and then I saw your persistence and stuff, and I thought, there's any way I can keep some untruths from being told, and I don't know. It's exhilarating working with an artist.
Yeah.
Fun talking to you.
Really, it's been a lot of fun talking to you, Jack. I really, really enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I look forward. If you have any other questions or clarify stuff, great. Thank you very much, and good luck with this book.